is going on, Ballislife family? I'm Devin, Ugland, and I'm joined by my co-host Ronnie Flores, and this is the Ballislife original show, On the Rise. On today's episode, we're taking a look at Gonzaga's Jalen Suggs, who's projected to be a top 3 pick in the 2021 NBA draft. Ronnie, why don't you give us a rundown on Jalen Suggs' high school career?
Yeah, Devin, I'm glad to be on another episode of On the Rise with you. This is obviously, I like breaking down these players. I find out a little bit more about them as we go into them, based on our points of view and your point of view. And I hope the fans get a little bit more too as we go deep into this NCAA tournament. Obviously, Jalen Suggs in a very good ideal situation with Gonzaga. And I thought his high school career, he was in some ideal situations as well. He is a total winner. I think me and you really like production and winning. Those are two things we hold our hat on. And he definitely fits the bill in those categories. He was a 3-time gold medal winner with USA basketball. And that's so far, obviously, he has more chance to have for more accolades there. And he was also, a winner. His high school team won three state titles, and he was looking for a 4th straight title his senior year last year in 220, but obviously COVID cut that short. At the time, they were 25-3, number 15 in the Fab 50. But I think the point had already been made. Devin, he's a great high school player, one of the best ever in Minnesota. Suggs was named Mr. Basketball, 23.3 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 5.0 assists, 3.9 steals. I mean, he pretty much did it all. Had 2,945 points, just shy of 3,000, playing with Chet Holmgren, another person whose game we've broken down on the Rise. And I think people, people didn't know, well, who's better, Chet or who's better, Jalen, and it looks like they're both great players.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should be debating the, greatness of, Chet Holmgren versus Jalen Suggs, because they're both great in their own ways. Let's jump into the strengths of Jalen Suggs' game, Ronnie. You mentioned kind of the biggest overall point for me, Ronnie, is just the winning attitude and the winning atmosphere that he brings.
Sure.
He was a 2-sport star in high school. He had a chance to go play, quarterback at various, Power 5 schools, whether it was Ohio State or whatever it may be. He chose the basketball route, which is probably looking at, right now based on how he's doing at Gonzaga and how he's doing in the NBA draft, projections, probably the best choice for him. But like you said, Ronnie, he has a great all-around feel for the point guard position. 6'5", he has the ability to take over a game offensively, but he also thrives in a game management type of role where he can get into the paint at will in the half-court setting. He can set up teammates, or he can, power through contact and finish above the rim, or through contact and, get to the foul line, where he shoots at a 74% clip. As a guard, you want to see, high 70s, low 80s, obviously
Sure.
90s with the, Steph Curry or Larry Bird type of percentage. But that's probably one of the things he can improve on, but we'll talk about that later. I think his combination of size, speed, physicality, and athleticism are just, way too much for defenses to deal with at the college level in transition. He rebounds the defensive glass really well, pushes the break by himself, and, can make a high IQ decision on whether to, use numbers and, take advantage of a situation where, transition or fast break bucket makes sense, or he pulls it out and runs offense at a high level with high IQ decisions. And all those physical tools that we talked about from size, strength, athleticism standpoint, they're just not there for show. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
He uses those things to, whether it's blow by guys in half court and get into the paint and, absorb contact and finish, or, get out in transition downhill to where guys can't stop him. He's like a freight train, Ronnie. He's one of those explosive guys, like a, transition ability, like a Russell Westbrook type of guy who, if you're going to step in front of him and try and take a charge, you're probably going to get injured. You know what I mean? So
he probably likes that. He probably gets the football flashbacks,
Yeah. He has that football mentality. He has that football physicality, but he also has that all around feel of a basketball player and fluidity of a basketball player. And I think for me, Ronnie, the biggest strength and kind of what, sets Suggs apart from other guards in college basketball and other guards in the G League or in this draft in general is just the mentality he has. He's kind of a it factor guy, kind of a guy who people can look to make a high level decision, the right decision in key moments of the game. And he doesn't back down from challenges. Obviously, Gonzaga is, at the time of this recording, Ronnie, Gonzaga is in the second round of the NCAA tournament, 27-0, with Jalen Suggs being the the primary ball handler, the catalyst for that team. As a freshman, it doesn't get any better than that. Running a high level program, high level offense with the efficiency and just the ability that Jalen Suggs has done that. And I think that overall translates best to the NBA level because NBA guys need to trust the guy with the basketball in their hands to make the right play, get guys involved where they're best suited to be involved. And I mean, with him running a high level team, a high level offense to a 27-0 record, and potentially, hopefully they can pull out a victory as we're recording this show, Ronnie, but potentially a Final Four run, national championship run. I mean, what else do you want in a point guard?
Yeah.
What are your strengths?
Yeah, you can't, Devin, just closing out on your strengths. You can't beat that package. It's very hard to you look at that and you're like, man, who's been in a better situation? Obviously, the top picks all have various situations they're in. Some are not even in college basketball. And there's only two guys left who are really at the high projection that are left in this tournament, which is Jalen and Evan Mobley. The other guys have either been knocked out or they didn't even play college. So this ideal situation has really helped, Jalen Suggs. So to speak on his strengths and to piggyback some of yours, when you talk about him being a grid hooper, a football player, we're not just talking about a guy who he had a scholarship because he had some intangible. This guy was Mr. Football in his state, in addition to being Mr. Basketball. So it wasn't like I'm going to take the football season off. Like, he put it together and played. And we're talking about one of the best ever combo guys, across the country. I'm thinking of like Ron Curry. You think of Ron Curry, you think of a quarterback in that regard. Besides Ron Curry, I can't think of a quarterback right now. Maybe Greg Paulus, but he's a much more physical specimen than Greg Paulus was.
What about Charlie Ward?
Yeah, Charlie Ward, he's again bigger. He's 6'5". Charlie Ward might have been 6'1".
Okay.
I don't think Charlie Ward was as highly decorated as a high school basketball player. Jalen Suggs is a legitimate top 3 to 5 player in his class. Obviously, we can break that down if we want, but the point is you don't see too many guys. So when you look at that, the durability, the toughness, all fits in. He's a competitive, a leader, team first, all that stuff, strength, stamina, balance that you just see in a great athlete. And then when you throw in his attributes, you're like, wow, this is a complete package. I think he makes a good reads. He can break down, finish with contact. He gets up more springy than people might think with his size. And, he can get in his stance and guard, and he can play the passing lanes really well. That's what I've seen with the Gonzaga games. He just jumps the passing lanes really well. So the IQ kicks in. I also thought he moved well without the ball in the games I've seen, in the highlights I've seen. He moves well with the ball, gets to the open shots, and he really lacks little that the ideal point guard would want to have. And then you get him in the half court. He has a terrific burst, terrific first step, and that physical ability kicks in. So there's not too much to knock there in terms of like his strengths as a player. Again, when we talk about his weaknesses, when we talk about his projection, we'll get into maybe this ideal situation with Gonzaga highlighting, extenuating some of those strengths, or is he really that good, Devin? We'll break that down, but I really don't have too many weaknesses other than, like you mentioned, his shooting and his shooting percentages, which hopefully he will continue to improve upon.
Yeah, Ronnie, you touched briefly on his weaknesses. Let's jump into those in a more in-depth fashion. I think, let me run down the stats real quick here, Ronnie. 14 points, 5.4 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 50% overall from the field, 34% from the three-point line, and 74.5% from the free throw line. So, I mean, you look at just from a number standpoint, I like guys to be at 38%. We've covered this a lot on this show from the three-point line. And I'm curious to see how that three-point shot translates when the line moves back a little bit. The free throw shooting, I think, is another thing where he can jump up 5 to 7%, being that low 80s. That would be ideal. And I think ball security is another thing that is going to be something that is important for him at the next level, because he's averaging 2.8 turnovers per game at Gonzaga. And that's with the team, Ronnie, there's a lot of guys in that roster who are going to be really good NBA players, whether it's Corey Kispert or Drew Timme or Joel Ayayi. I'm trying to say that right. Another wing. but that's a really high power team. Andrew Nemhard, who's also a kind of a combo guard, that's a really high level team. 2 point, closing 3 turnovers a game. That's a little too much. Obviously, as an NBA point guard, as the number one option, as the lead ball handler at that level, you want to be in the low 2s, high 1s. So I think clean up the ball security a little bit. And then again, we're going to talk about this all the time, 3-point shooting, making sure you're able to hit that off the catch, off the bounce, pull up game. And, a lot of what Jalen Suggs does, Ronnie, if you watch him closely, it's 3-point line when guys go under ball screens, or if they go over ball screens or transition, get to the basket, get fouled, get to the free throw line. So where is his middle game? Does he have it? Does he have a pull up 17 to 15 foot jumper? Does he have the, kind of fade away off the glass, something different to where when an NBA rim protector's in there at 7 feet, who's just as athletic or maybe even more athletic than Jalen Suggs, is he able to, diversify his game to the point where he can keep, rim protectors off balance with the floater or a pull-up jumper? What are your weaknesses, Ronnie?
Yeah, Devin, those weaknesses make sense. And I'm with you on those. I do see that too. Like, where does he fit in with maybe with a situation that's not as ideal as the one he's in? Because like you said, it's downhill, and he's going through defenses pretty easily at this level that I've seen.
Right.
And is that knock on the college game, or is that just, Gonzaga's playing that well and he's that good? It's a combination of those things. That's not what's going to happen in the NBA all the time, especially if he goes to a weaker team, which, he's projected to because of what's going on, unless there's some trades, because he's obviously, projected pretty well in this draft. You look at him as an ideal play and plug guy, meaning he was a perfect recruit for this team. If you look at some of the other top recruits, especially Cade Cunningham, they may have to carry a team a little bit more. He was an ideal fit. So again, we're not speaking about his weaknesses or some question marks in terms of his game, but just how he's going to fit in, how it translate. Will they work and he goes to a team not so talented? Is he going to uplift his teammates if his team is not, up to snuff like this Gonzaga team is at the NBA level? How does his game translate when that's the situation? I think he does have to improve off the catch. That's noticeable. And, again, like you said, does he have a great long-term NBA player, that 15-footer, 17-footer that's kind of automatic, that we're going to get into the player comparables that some of those guys have? Does he have that? Will he be developing that? Has he shown glimpses of that? Or is it just, like you said, all downhill, all, open court, and Gonzaga's just running away with it? Because obviously in high school, he was obviously talented enough to get into the key anytime he wanted. He played with another great player. So those are still some question marks I think people have. Again, how will that affect his projection against the other top guys? I think he's trending up either way. Again, as you say, we don't want to have an on the rise jinx because they're playing now in the NCAA tournament, but so far so good. And I mean, again, we're getting to nitpicking a guy who seems to have all the intangibles of a long-term NBA point guard.
I think to your point about, how his leadership or how, his game translates to a team that needs him to be the guy rather than, a piece of the team. Obviously he's still the best NBA prospect on that Gonzaga team, but that's a really good college basketball team. And I think we'd have a better look at this if Gonzaga had played that game against Baylor before that game was canceled due to COVID-19 protocols, because Baylor, that's a freakish defense, man. They have guys who are potential lockdown defenders at the NBA level, with Davion Mitchell, Jared Butler, guys like that. And Mark Vidal, who's just an absolute monster.
Yeah.
I think if we would have seen that game, we would have had a better feel for how Jalen Suggs' physicality plays against NBA level type defenders. But unfortunately, we didn't get that game. I think this is my prediction for the NCAA tournament. I have Gonzaga Baylor in the national championship game. So I hope we get to see that game come to fruition, and then we might get a better idea of how Jalen Suggs' overall game will translate against a high-level defense. All right, let's jump into our NBA comparables for Jalen Suggs. Ronnie, I'm going to throw it to you. Get us started here.
Yeah, when you look at Jalen Suggs, he really is a truly unique player. Devin, I didn't really realize that until I started looking at the high school classes, which kind of translate to the draft classes a year or two later, and obviously with the older ones 4 years later. But I'm focusing more on the more recent guys. I'm looking at 2010, 11, 13. There's not too many guys in the last 20 years that I really feel confident in comparing. I say, yep, he plays exactly like him. I see little glimpses of certain guys, and they're good players. But again, I'll let you take some of the more high ceiling or
Sure.
guys that are right on the money. But I wanted to mention some guys that just throw it out there to kind of compare and contrast a little bit. I like Kobe White. A few years ago we had him in the Ballislife All-American game. I see some similarities there, but he's more efficient than Kobe was, and he just a little bit more of I think a true like NBA one team leader type. Tyler Ennis, who wasn't that as highly regarded. Tyler was coming, with CIA bounce out of St. Benedict's in 2013. He was more of a top 20, top 25 guy. And he just exploded in that year at Syracuse. He started out really great, and Syracuse was good. But I expect, and I think most people do expect Suggs to be a lot better player. I like Marcus Smart. I saw a lot of Marcus Smart in high school. Marcus, big, physical. And, there was a lot of discussion about what type of player Marcus would be. Some guys thought he was a true point guard playing for the Texas Assault. He went to Oklahoma State. He was very good. Maybe in the 10 range. ESPN had him 10. Rivals had him 10. 247 had him 13. And he plays off the ball. And some people thought he was better off the ball, obviously. I like that physical nature, what Marcus brings to a team. And Marcus has been a very good contributor at the NBA level, but I don't think he has the true point guard ability that Jalen Suggs has overall. Jamal Murray on the high end, Jamal's dynamic. They have that big shoulders, big body, get in the lane whenever they want. I just don't know if Jalen is that explosive at the NBA level, and he doesn't have the pull-up game and the shooting that Jamal has at this time. So I see a little bit of various guys, and I can get into some more, but those are the ones that I like. I also like Eric Bledsoe, longtime NBA player. Suggs has more size in him, but he's very physical in nature. But again, I'm taking bits and pieces of guys from various games because I don't have that one slam dunk comparable, Devin, but I think you do.
Yeah, it's funny because you always tend to take the higher road on these things, and I'm the guy digging for guys like you just brought up, whether it's Tyler Ennis or Marcus Smart or Bledsoe. I think those are all safe bets.
Sure.
I think for me the two safe NBA comparables, safe NBA bets are Drew Holiday and Chauncey Billups. Obviously, Suggs more comparable to Drew Holiday in body type. Okay. Size-wise, I think Chauncey Billups a couple inches shorter than Jalen Suggs is, but from leadership, two-way impact as a defender, rebounder, scorer and assister, I think Drew Holiday and Chauncey Billups make a lot of sense to me to compare Jalen Suggs to, because Chauncey Billups, obviously Mr. Big Shot, earned him that nickname for being a clutch performer, and yes. I think Jalen Suggs has similar attributes to that, as a guy who you can go to down the stretch to get you either a good shot or a bucket. And Drew Holiday, just from Drew's kind of a very reserved, very confident, but not like overly confident to where he's making a show
reckless.
Of himself. Yeah, reckless, like that. He's very poised, and I think Suggs has similar poise, similar mindset, similar approach to what Drew Holiday does, has done throughout his career. Higher end comps that I want to make, Ronnie, you'll see a lot of Jason Kidd because of size. They're both 6'4", 6'5". They're both open court. Jason Kidd wasn't super like first step quick, right? He kind of more used his big frame to create space in the half court setting and change of speed, change of pace to get into the paint.
Fast.
But in the open court, Ronnie, he was fast. He got by guys super fast, got by guys, was able to, set teammates up or finish through contact around the basket. And I think Jason Kidd made himself into a respectable 3-point shooter over time in the NBA. And I think that's what Jalen Suggs is going to have to do. And then my highest of heights, Ronnie, is Gary Payton. I think you're going to mention here in a second that, body types were different at the same stage because Payton was very thin. But I think from an overall just feel for the game, overall style of play, toughness, how they're going to impact at the NBA level, I think Gary Payton is a very high ceiling for Jalen Suggs to kind of try and reach, especially on the defensive end. If Jalen Suggs can become a Gary Payton type defensive stopper and then become a Gary Payton type of just like, I don't know, dog on the offensive end, just
a guy who gets it done offensively.
Pretty tough, runs the show. I think, I think a combination Drew Holiday, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, Chauncey Billups, those are high comps, Ronnie, but I think Jalen Suggs has it in him.
Wow. Yeah. Like you said, I wanted to kind of give fans a little bit more of those comparables back to when those guys were coming in to the NBA draft or into college. Chauncey Billups, like you mentioned, he was more in the 20 range, 19 or 22 in the rankings. Gary Payton wasn't that highly regarded, was a good high school player, more in the 100, but he was a lot thinner, like you said. But I think players obviously were all a lot thinner than 30 years ago when Gary was coming out of Skyline in Oakland. Now is over 30 years ago. You just don't seem that far, but he is. But like you mentioned, offensively, he wasn't, you wouldn't look at him as a guy you would want to have an offensive clinic around, but he could make big shots. Yeah. Just like you said, does Jalen have the ability and the grit and the toughness just to make the big shot when you need it? Gary could, and he can create shots, kind of unorthodox a little bit at times. But so I think Jalen does have some advantages in that regard. And you mentioned Jason Kidd. It's funny because, when you talk about Jason Kidd and his speed, I know a couple of scouts, and I seen it a little bit too. Obviously, I was younger, but I got to see him because he's the biggest name in California high school history, damn near, as far as a must-watch player. Yeah. And he was so fast. He was as fast as the ball with dribbling the ball. Some guys were all running without it. Like, he would just sprint by guys incredibly. And you see a little bit of Suggs doing that with Gonzaga, and you just see, well, how is that going to translate to the NBA level? And like you said, Jason adjusted his game a little bit, but he never lost that defensive mindset. And him and Gary wanted to take over defensively pretty much every game. I think Drew Holiday's like that too. Like I said, maybe he doesn't get the credit as those guys did. Obviously, they're Hall of Fame players, but he brings a lot of that. So those are very, complementary comparables. And like you said, you have a really high. That's giving Jalen Suggs a really high, something to shoot for, but you're also giving him a lot of compliments and kudos and accolades there, because those guys are obviously very great. I like the Chauncey Billups one that I'll throw out there that I think fits in, and I think he's more explosive than him. But if he lasts long and he can do some of the things he done with the big frame, is Andre Miller. Yeah. Andre Miller, I think, coming from my era in the 90s of growing up, he's probably the most unsung NBA player that stick around long and was very good. Coming out of Verbum Day, he was a little bit under recruited. He played out of position. He didn't play point guard at Verbum Day, but he had the big body and he could play defense. He could play inside, and he developed that under Rick Majerus at Utah. It was a perfect fit. Just like you say, Suggs is a perfect fit for Gonzaga. He was a perfect fit for Utah, and it brought out the best in him. And, obviously the rest is history there. So, as far as fit, feel, some of these comparisons, it's very interesting how we're not like saying one of these guys is a slam dunk. Like we're kind of throwing bits and pieces of various guys. Usually we have one guy that it's like we just are holding our hat on that comparison. And I think that's a compliment to Jalen's game. He has a lot of everybody's game in it, and he can fit in a lot of different roles.
Yeah, my comparisons, Ronnie, could come back to bite me a few years down the stretch, but I'm confident in Jalen Suggs and his ability to kind of live up to those expectations. You brought up Andre Miller. Obviously, Andre Miller not as explosive vertically or speed-wise as Jalen Suggs. I think athletically more like a Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
But with the poise and the kind of floor general ability of Andre Miller.
Yeah. Yeah. That's if he can bring some of those two guys into his game, I mean, you're talking about a long-term NBA player who's going to be very good. Andre Miller kind of can make junk shots. He can create shots. So far Jalen hasn't had to do that because he's physically more talented than most of the players he goes up against. But like you said, that's going to change. Maybe we'll see a little bit of that here in the later rounds in the tournament, or we'll see when he's in the NBA as where he lands, if that's going to be to fruition. I think it will. I'm with you that I think it will. Again, I do have some question mark, and we'll go over that in the future forecast. But I like those comparisons where we're not banking them on one. We're just kind of leaving it out there a little bit, and we hope to maybe we'll get some comments, some people mentioning what they think.
Okay, Ronnie, let's close it out with our future forecast for Jalen Suggs. Here's the question, man. Where will he get, what number will he get drafted? What type of NBA career is he going to have? What do you got? Let's hear it.
Yeah. For the NBA draft, right now, as we see it, I don't see him getting drafted over Cade, Evan, or Jalen Green.
Okay.
Again, the things I see is when we look at what we've seen people make mistakes on, whether it's GMs, scouting experts, etc. They keep going back to the raw athleticism, the measurables over the intangibles that we like, the winning, the other leadership. They just don't put as much stock on it. It doesn't seem like they do lately in the last few years. I mean, when you look at a guy like Anthony Edwards, the number one pick of last year's draft, like you can't miss the athleticism and explosiveness. You just can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back to your point, and you mentioned this when we were doing an NBA draft show at the last NBA draft. You just like some of the attributes and some of the moxie of Melo Ball, and you thought, man, I think this guy's gonna hit. Like you just thought of that, but you're like, yeah, I don't know if he's gonna go number one. And I think that's the same thing coming into this draft with Jalen. We like some of his attributes, but you can't miss Evan Mobley. You just look at him, you can't really go. We mentioned that on his On the Rise. You can't go wrong with him.
Yeah.
I just think some teams are going to look at Jalen Green and they're not going to pass on his chance to be an athletic two guard or combo guard who's just so explosive. I just don't see that they're not. Also, when you talk about some of these guys, some, like you said, the minds are made up and some of them didn't even need this season. I'm not really sure Jalen or Evan did. So the college season doesn't seem to be as important as once was, but there's little doubt that this situation in Gonzaga has definitely pushed Jalen Suggs into the top 5. I have him at 4 or 5, maybe 4. I think that's good. Can he get higher, Devin? I want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I'm on the train with that. He's a top 3 pick regardless of who's picking. Okay. I think with how important that guard position is, especially the guy handling the ball right now in the NBA, he's kind of a no-brainer. As far as he's a guy who's going to come in with the leadership ability, with the mentality, with the toughness and the durability to endure an 82 game regular season at the NBA level and take, the flights, the back-to-backs, all that stuff. He's proven to be a durable guy with a football type mentality and toughness that inside of a basketball package, right? Like that doesn't happen very often. As you mentioned, you tried to find guys who had that ability. And the one guy I can think of is Charlie Ward. And Suggs is obviously a better basketball player than Charlie Ward was.
Bigger, more physical.
Bigger, at the same
time. He's more, Charlie Ward would never be in position to be a top 5 pick.
Right.
He didn't have that ability. I think he could have been a top 5 NFL pick, but he didn't choose that route,
Exactly. So I think his all-world mindset, Ronnie, just separates him from guys like other guards in this draft, whoever they may be. I'm going, obviously I think from a total safe package standpoint, Evan Mobley, number 1. We've talked about this in our Evan Mobley show. Make sure you guys head to the Ballislife Podcast Network. Check out the first 4 shows that we've done. We talked about this a lot. Top 5 prospects, I think, are already set. It's Mobley, Cade, Suggs, Jalen Green, and Jonathan Kuminga. It's really tough for Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga, Ronnie, because that G League bubble was okay.
Sure.
What did they get out of it? Like, what did we learn about those guys? With Jalen Suggs, in the NCAA tournament, if they're able to make a Elite 8, Final 4, national championship run, you have to take him top 3. You have to if you need a guard, because he's proven that he can win on that big stage with the bright lights and all the pressure.
Yeah, it's like you said. I'm with you. I like putting a little bit more stock in the intangibles, the winning, the leadership. I just don't see right now that the NBA brass is going to do that. They're just going to look at the measurables. They're going to look at the attributes, look at the combine testing, the numbers, the vertical, the reach, the standing reach, the jumping reach. I just think they are. That's just where the game seems to be. And I get it, and there's been some mistakes in that regard. I mean, again, look at James Wiseman. Again, you look at him like, how could you pass this guy up? And I think he can be really good. But are some Golden State fans not going, man, right now, I wish we could have Melo? You kind of mentioned that before in our In the Paint and On the Rise shows. You've mentioned that in our draft draft party episode we had during the 2020 NBA draft. You made that point, and I just think it's a valid point. Again, I'm not knocking James Wiseman because it might be the right pick as time goes on. It might be the right pick, but that's where I think you look at. I do think, I don't know who it's going to be, but whether it's Kuminga or Jalen Suggs, I do think a team's going to say, damn, I wish we would have got them, that player, one of those two, one of those picks. So who's going to be the player? I'm not really sure, but I don't think this top 5 is going to go exactly as we think, in terms of like number 1's going to have the NBA best career, number 2 is going to have the second best career, number 3 is going to have the third best career. I just don't think it's going to work like that.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for our Jalen Suggs episode of On the Rise. For more On the Rise content, head to YouTube, hit up the Ballislife podcast network, check out the first 4 episodes of Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Sharif Cooper, and JD Davison. We're going to continue to put out high quality content. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Subscribe, like, leave us a comment. We want to hear what you have to say. But until the next episode of On the Rise, Ronnie and Devin are signing off.
What's up, Ballislife fam? Thanks for watching this video. If you want to support the movement, make sure you check out the product listing below this video and cop some of this merch.